I was a science fiction fanatic, still am. I love science fiction shows and science fiction literature, and I've written about it. And so as a 9-year-old kid, to spend the summer on a science fiction set was as much fun as I could imagine. So I loved watching the spaceships, loved watching them do the special effects, and they would teach me little things here and there about how the effects would work. Yeah, I loved just running around a spaceship for a summer. It was very visually exciting, and it was just a lot of fun to play.
The year is 3732, and mankind long ago left the Earth to explore space. The best and brightest young people from across the galaxy have been drafted to enroll at Space Academy. Under the guidance of their instructor, Commander Gampu, the young cadets of Blue Team include Chris Gentry, his sister Laura, action-oriented Tigar, brainy Paul, pretty young Adrian, the robot Peepo, and the blue-haired mysterious space orphan Loki. Airing on CBS Saturday mornings beginning in the fall of 1977 season, Space Academy was another groundbreaking live-action series from Filmation Studios. With special effects by some of the technical wizards who had created Star Wars that same year, Space Academy was praised by critics and proved popular with audiences both young and old. Now you can learn the real stories behind the series from its creators and actors. Join us as we go back to school with Space Academy.
Space Academy, I owe a thanks to a man whose name has not been mentioned so far. His name is Alan Duchovny. He worked with us when we were doing the first Superman show. And Alan had been a radio director and producer. He produced the original Superman radio show and went to CBS after we had finished Superman, the animated one, and worked there as vice president of children's programming. And Duke, as he was called, came to me one day after he left CBS, I believe. And he said, I've really always wanted to do a radio show called Space Academy. And he said, why don't you think about developing a television show for Saturday morning about a space academy that trains young people to live in space, work in space, and do it in an interesting and fascinating and worthwhile and pro-social way. We ended up really doing something marvelous.
I was so excited because I remember I, as a young person, was on the bridge of the Star Trek Enterprise. And now, with the idea that we were doing Space Academy, I said, I get my own deck, my own space deck. And so I was so excited. And there was, everywhere you looked, there was like all these lights and like buttons and things just to press. It was just so much fun just to kind of press. I was really, and the special effects, it was amazing because, at the time, they were cutting edge. Now you can have like monsters and things and do it on the computer.
I always say that Space Academy was kind of a Star Trek for kids, and if you look at the ethnic balance, you have Caucasians and you have African Americans and you have Asians and you have, in Loki's case, extraterrestrial, and you have a robot, and the sense that all of these people could be who they were, but all come together in some kind of a whole. That was, their very kind of American melting pot image that they really came back to a number of times.
The way I became Tigar is like any other actor. I was a young actor. You go to the audition, and you read, and then you get called back, and you read again, and then you read again, and finally they say, we whittled it down, it's you and 17 others. And so I remember it just kind of worked out, and I just really wanted this part because I love outer space, I like this fantasy aspect of it, and I thought, boy, if I can just get this. And so they finally, like in the 6th audition, they said, you got it. However, are you old enough? You have to be 18, and I wasn't 18 years old. By the time they were able to shoot it, I had documents that said I was 18 years old.
The way I came to be on Space Academy is I was doing a play probably very close to here at the Golden Mall Playhouse in Burbank called The Time of the Cuckoo by Arthur Lawrence. And I sent out little postcards with a picture of myself and a flyer to the play and a little note on the back of it saying, please come and see the play. Sent that out to production offices and casting directors, and this came across the desk of the folks that were doing Space Academy. And they were having a hard time casting the part of Loki, who at that time was actually supposed to be called Peepo. And they liked the look that I had in this picture. They just thought I looked exotic and strange, and they were having a hard time finding some that looked alien enough. And I come from a mixed racial heritage, African American, Native American on my father's side, and Russian, Polish, Jewish on my mother's side. And everyone has always said, wow, what are you? Well, I can't figure it out. I look like a million different nationalities and been mistaken for everything. So here's this picture of this kid with olive skin, this big head of curly hair, and you look at the picture and I look like an alien. And they said, let's bring this kid in. He just looks strange and alien enough.
Cadet Captain Chris Gentry was the character I played. And originally, Lou Scheimer took me outside one day and showed me the book that the characters were based on. And I was supposed to have been the twin of Pamela. And the problem was that she came up about to my belt line. And they didn't think that was going to work that well. So I think they faded that idea of being twins out of it, and we were just brother and sister as the show went on.
The cast that I was very lucky to be cast with that summer, because they were all a very warm, energetic, very happy group of people to be around. Jonathan Harris as the lead, of course, was fantastic. The fact that he had been around so long, had done so much, had great stories, and he was very generous in terms of teaching other people aspects of the craft and really wanting everyone to be their best, and would tell great stories, and just very, very warm and very fatherly figure for everyone. And the whole cast was like that. It was like having a group of brothers and sisters for the summer.
Jonathan Harris, you cannot find another individual like Jonathan. I mean, never was, never will be again. He was so unique. But I remember the first time I met Jonathan, we were in this doctor's office. Whenever you do a TV series, for insurance purposes, for the studio or network or whoever, they have to get insurance. And so we were just kind of sitting there getting a checkup. And I recognized this guy, and I knew that the Space Academy people were there at this time to get a checkup. So I come over there and I go, hi, I'm Brian Tochi. I'm going to be in Space Academy with you. And your name is? And he looks at me, and he lifts his head and he goes, dear boy, you don't know who I am. And our relationship started from there.
Jonathan Harris was a living legend. I had been a fan of Lost in Space, so you couldn't walk up to him without wanting to throw out some of the lines that were used in that show. He had one of the quickest senses of humor I think I'd ever been around. He had an incredible knack for doing different types of acting and jumping into different characters. And I think everybody in the set just loved to go up to him with scenes that we were going to be doing and say, okay, what do we do here? And his answer to everything would be, just remember, it's old man, little boy, dog. Whatever you do, there's only 5 scripts that they can do in any kind of theater, and the one that I've always enjoyed is old man, little boy, dog. So we all wanted to be the old man, except for Eric.
And Chris Gentry, that's Rick Carrot, first time I ever met him. What I remember, that's a tall Chris. He's very tall. And he was a little older, and he was just the nicest guy. He was just one of those really nice guys who sweat a lot. I remember he sweat a lot.
Brian Tochi, what can I say about him? At the time, he was probably the most energetic, fun-loving, enjoyable person that I could have imagined working with. He came up from Orange County, I think, every day. He just made a delight.
I knew Pamela because we were both child actors, and she and I, way back when, did an original episode of Star Trek called And the Children Shall Lead. I knew Pam from there. We knew each other because at the time, kid actors it was just kind of a small world, so we all kind of knew each other. Then there was Maggie Cooper, who I just loved. I remember it was one of the first things she ever did. She came from like Washington, I think, or Seattle or somewhere, and she was just so happy to be there, and I was just happy that she was. Then there's Ty Henderson. He was supposed to be in the Bible, and a Bible for a show is basically, it kind of lists the type of individuals and what they're going to play and what their background is. He was supposed to be this tough from the East Side or some kind of tough, but he basically turned out to be this fun, comical, light guy.
Eric was very young. He was, trying to remember, I think he was the second shortest member of the cast, the robot being a little shorter than he was. But he was great. He had energy, he was running around all the time, he had the blue hair.
Peepo. He always broke down, that guy. There was two Peepos. Actually, people don't know that Peepo was not its original name. Actually, Eric Green played Loki. His name was supposed to be Peepo in the show. And Peepo's name in the script was supposed to be Sparky. So somehow Sparky got thrown away, and Loki came in, and Peepo became the robot. And Peepo, he was great when he was working, but we'd be in the middle of a line, and he'd have to respond, or he'd have to walk by, and all of a sudden he'd go, zzz, and that would be it. So that's Peepo.
The relationship of Loki and the robot Peepo was an interesting one. I think in retrospect, I didn't think about it at the time, but I think that there was a kind of Mr. Spock, Dr. McCoy kind of love-hate relationship with the two of them, where they would tease each other and they were kind of like sibling rivals with each other, but when it came right down to it, they really had a lot of affection with each other. So it was, in some ways, it's hard to believe that it's an inanimate object, because the character had so much personality the way you would have with any other character, and was kind of like my metallic brother for the summer. John Berwick, who was our script supervisor, also did the on-set dialogue. He would operate a little box that would make the light box on Peepo's chest light up. So every time he would speak and speak people's lines, you would see the array of lights on his chest light up. And then Erica Scheimer came in, Lou's daughter, and did the final voice.
I was waiting tables at an Italian restaurant in the Valley. During the course of the evening, in walked this very distinguished man through the front door, and he happened to be Arthur Nadell, who was the president of Filmation Studios. And he asked me to come out and audition for the lead in Space Academy, which I did, and it went to a blonde, not me. Went to Rick Carrot, great guy. And I had a blast. But well, nonetheless, the show got cast, and I wasn't in it, and I thought, well, that's it. So, on to the next audition whenever that arose. But I got a call out of nowhere, and it's Arthur Nadell on the other end of the line. And he asks me if I'd like to come out and work on the other side of the camera during the Space Academy shoot. I said, sure. And as long as it didn't interfere with any acting gigs that came up during the time. And so I found myself out at Filmation Studios, this warehouse out in the Valley, working for Arthur. I think I started for him as a stand-in. This was on Space Academy. And that grew very quickly into, I actually started doing some, right there on the set, rewriting of a script that came along and had problems, needed to be shortened, needed different words, so on and so forth. I had a knack for that. Arthur saw that knack, and he asked me if I would actually even rewrite a script, which I did for the show. I did the off-camera voices of robots, the Peepo and Wiki and other things as well, so that the actors in front of the camera had something to react to. And I mean, all in all, it was just a fantastic experience.
One of the themes that resonates through a lot of the episodes of Space Academy is you have these people that start off and they're very standoffish and they're kind of loners, and it's really, the episode is about them finding a family and finding a home within the body of the Space Academy team. And I think that's one of the themes that they return to a lot. I guess the feeling was that kids growing up that want a sense of belonging and feel this sense of alienation, that can really lead to a lot of troubles down the road. And the value of community and the value of being part of a larger community without squashing your individuality was very much a theme that was underlying a lot of the episodes of Space Academy.
We were not on a regular set. We were in a warehouse. We were shooting in 3 rooms, going from the planet set over to the Seeker and then into the campus offices and whatnot themselves at the Academy. We didn't have a chance to go out. We were all socializing inside, so the age thing didn't matter that much. We hung around together. The people in the models area were all busy working. The crew and everybody were doing the setups. They were all busy with things. So we were thrown together, and I think we just became a good community that way. Nobody paid attention to the fact that I was as old as I was. Thank you. We had a thing one time Maggie Cooper, I think, is the one that started this. She brought Pamela over to a conversation, and then Brian went into the conversation. I went over into the conversation. Everybody was standing around counting words on the script and figuring out who had the most words in the scene. And then they were sitting around, we were all sitting around, and dividing up the parts. So, well, you know, so-and-so doesn't have as many words in this one as that one, so why don't we take this dialogue, and he or she can say that, and that became a fun thing on the set. The writers didn't appreciate it, and it was stopped very quickly, but as a group, you know, we had ways of working with each other that got to be fun like that. And I think that the element of that was encouraged on the set. It really was a fun, family-type environment in working.
The makeup process was a rather long and arduous one for them finally to find the right look for Loki once they had cast me. They tried experimenting with different skin tones and different shades of makeup, and eventually what they did is they settled on a kind of silvery, slightly sparkly skin tone that they put on me. They had false eyelashes, which they put on top of my eyebrows to give my eyebrows a kind of otherworldly feel. And then there was the infamous blue hair. And spray painted, you know, with hairsprays and trying to get it to look right on film. Sometimes it looked blue, sometimes it looked gray. It really depended on how good your television was. I think I had a black and white set at the time, so it all looked black and white to me. But it was quite a long process for them to finally get the look that was just alien and otherworldly enough. And every morning I would go into the makeup, and they would put it all on, and then they would use blue hairspray and spray my hair blue. And to this day, because smell is such a powerful sense memory, such a powerful stimulator for memory, the smell of hairspray takes me back to the summer of 1977 in Canoga Park getting hairspray every day.
The jumpsuits that we wore on the show were really interesting. They brought us one day over to a place that specialized in making costumes. We had no idea what we were going to wear on the show. And they started describing what the characters were going to wear, and then they produced these outfits. They were fun to wear. They fit, I mean, they were custom made. They were very comfortable, but they had a latex t-shirt to them. Because we were shooting in a warehouse, when they were doing the shots, they had to turn the air conditioner off because of the noise. So the temperatures would get 90 to 100 degrees inside the warehouse. Between shots, they would actually give us towels that we could stuff in the t-shirts to keep the sweat marks from coming in. In 8 weeks, we did something like 14 shows. Everything was busy, everything was active, and the camaraderie was important to be able to get through that kind of a schedule.
We took an old barn of a warehouse, put a bunch of material there, built the interior of the academy. I went out to a little place in North Hollywood. Actually, it wasn't North Hollywood, it was in Van Nuys, and I was looking for people who could make models, three-dimensional models, because we had to make some ships. And there was an outfit out there that had been doing a show in England that was going to be released later on that year, and they had a bunch of guys who could do models, and they were still working on them. I went out and I saw these guys, and these guys were working on Star Wars. And in the corner is a robot, and it's R2-D2, and it's got cobwebs all over it. And then there's 3CPO, and then there are the X-fighters, and then there's ships lying around all over the place. I said, these guys are nuts. I mean, how can you do this stuff? And so I hired a bunch of them. Hired a bunch means two. And they built the academy.
I had been doing extra casting for a couple of the Filmation shows during the summers, and I guess they thought I was pretty organized because I got everyone to the set on time and so forth. And so when they were, I guess, got the contract with CBS to do this science fiction show, Space Academy, that was going to be on Saturday morning kiddie television but was live action, they had hired a visual effects, if you want to call it, a cinematographer, and they wanted to give him some support. They called me up and wanted to know if I was available and if I knew anything about visual effects. When they called me, I was completely broke and did not even have the rent that month, and so I just kind of fudged a little and said, sure, I know about visual effects, figuring that it'd taken about 4 or 5 weeks to figure out that I didn't know anything, and by then I'd have enough money to get through the summer. So they hired me, and I got lucky. I figured things out with a lot of help. Rob Main was in charge of the visual effects for the Space Academy show, and he was doing front projection star fields, and I was hired to come in and basically organize him, make sure that he had the right supplies and everything, and I began to, being quite curious and wanting to hold on to the job if I could longer than 4 or 5 weeks. I started asking questions and finding out what he was doing. As I found out what he was doing, I started doing a lot of the work myself and learned a little bit about stop motion. And basically I just started picking Rob's brains and figuring that the best thing I could do would learn what he was doing, which is what I did, and turned out to be a career. And I wound up 26 years now doing visual effects, all because of Filmation. Primarily the totality of work that I was responsible for was the spaceship miniatures, star fields, developing the look, the star fields, but also any kind of thing that would fall into the category of visual effects, that is something done either in post or away from the live action set. One of the bigger challenges was to get a star field that could be shot in camera. Bear in mind, we did not have time or budget to be sending photographic elements out to an optical house to be able to composite in star fields or planets or other kinds of things. So one of the first things that I was responsible for was, in the beginning, the star fields were generated through front projection. They were actual plates, astronomy plates and so forth. But when they were rephotographed, they looked kind of mushy, didn't look well. And on top of that, there was what would look like matte lines around your spaceships as they got close to the lens. So, in asking Rob, why are we doing front projection? And Rob said, well, we need points of light, we need stars. It seemed to me that the simple thing to do was to just hang a bunch of black duvetine on the back wall. I sent the production assistant out, this was in July or August, I sent the production assistant out to buy up all the Christmas tree lights, clear ones, not colored ones that he could find. We strung those on the back wall, took flat black paint, painted all of the bulbs, and then got up on the ladders and stuff and took a razor blade and scraped the front of the bulbs so that we could control and have brighter stars and lesser stars and so forth, and not just look like what they were, which was a bunch of Christmas tree lights hanging on the back wall. Actually, a major surprise was I got an email from a fan, and he wanted to do an inline or an online interview about the Space Academy. And as a reward for that, he actually sent me a miniature of the Seeker that is as accurate as any of the ones we shot. And this, by the way, is the actual size, one of the actual sizes of the Seeker. We also had a larger one that worked with some different size miniatures.
Well, if it's cleanup time.
You sure have that one, T-Gar. Camels are partis. Take a look at that one.
Looks like a vegan marking. People?
Affirmative, Chris. Translate.
I can remember a few science fiction conventions where I would stop to sign an autograph for somebody, and then another person would come over and another person would come over, and after a while there were just throngs of people asking for my autograph, which is a very, very strange thing, because to me, I'm just Eric Green. I'm not someone that is worthy of having you sign something. It seemed a little bit odd that someone would want my autograph. I did get a number of fan letters, which is, it's wonderful when there's someone in whatever field of endeavor you are in. It's great when someone says, hey, I really like what you're doing, I really appreciate it, I find it entertaining or inspirational, whatever. That was always a really lovely thing. I'm touched that there's so much affection for the show, because for me, it was something that I did for 2 months, and it was a great experience, and then I went on with the rest of my life. And the idea that people would remember it and would have such fond memories of it, that's really terrific. And over the years, people have sent me letters and have sent me manuscripts that they're working on of their own original Space Academy stories. There's a very enterprising artist named E. James Small, I believe, who made a model of the Space Academy Seeker, which he sent to me, which is really beautiful. I have it in my living room.
There was nothing like it on the air at the time, and I think it was a precursor to a lot of the things that came out afterwards. But Space Academy always amazed me that people remembered it, and people tell me I still kind of look the same. And I've done a lot of other projects since then that a lot of people know me from, but But I'm always surprised and pleased that they remember Space Academy, because I was really proud of it when I did it. It was a great show.
I ran into a woman not too long ago, and she was talking about where she grew up in the Midwest and where she went to school. As the conversation went on, it came out that I had done a little acting when I was younger. It turned out she was part of a club that got together every Saturday morning in this school and watched our show. And they had a fan club set up at the university in Iowa, and they would get together every week and watch the show. We got glimpses of that while we were doing the show. You know, the letters would come in as the show started to run, and people would talk about it. You don't appreciate that. You don't appreciate the fact that people actually watch these shows and they're entertained by it. It becomes part of their life. Almost 30 years later, and people are still remembering that show.
Are you all right?
I am. Chris! You know, for a while there, I thought I'd never see you or anybody else again.
And I thought I'd never get back. You have no idea how I missed you, little sister.
It's good to see you.
Since Space Academy, I still maintained I was still an actor. I've done a lot of things that a lot of people may still recognize. I'm one of the lead actors, the original actors in Revenge of the Nerds. Some of the Police Academy movies they play all the time. I am Leonardo in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, all 3 of them. So he's the one with the blue thing, and he goes, "Cowabunga, dude!" Anyway, that's me. As well as I've had other TV series and such. But I'll tell you something. Getting back to Space Academy, that was one of my most joyous times in the business, because it wasn't work, it was just fun for me.
I've been very fortunate that I've had the opportunity to do a lot of very interesting things. I went to a tremendous college. I got a law degree from a top law school. I'm a civil rights activist in the civil rights community. I've written a book that was critically acclaimed. A lot of things that have really worked out very nicely. And among those, Space Academy stands out as a really wonderful, wonderful, sweet memory.
The acting just stopped one day. I did the original pilot for Happy Days. I was the original older brother, Chuck. I did that show. I did some things that appear a lot on TV now. And that just stopped one day. So I got in the business world, and I started initially selling eggs. Went from that business to another business dealing in the trash industry, and went from that now into computers, where I don't deal as much with the general public. My day was spent dealing with computer screens and algorithms and just having fun, I guess, playing on the internet.
Since working for Filmation, Roger Corman hired me to build a visual effects studio. We shot Battle Beyond the Stars. I had the good fortune to hire Jim Cameron on that, his first job in the business, as well as some other people. I've been a freelance visual effects supervisor doing films over the years. Addams Family comes to mind, Last Action Hero. More recently, Jim Cameron's IMAX 3D stereo shows, the Ghosts of the Abyss, Aliens of the Deep, and a lot of stuff in between. I think one of the things that I wanted to say was a huge thrill for me to work at Space Academy was to work with a guy like Lou Scheimer, who was willing to take a chance on someone who was learning on the job, and he gave us a lot of freedom and a lot of guidance, and there's not too many people in the business nowadays that do that sort of thing. Over the years that I've been working in the industry, special effects, visual effects especially have changed with the advent of digital animation, computerized images, and all of the things really sophisticated motion capture and performance capture. However, in reviewing some of the images on the show, I have to say I'm pretty proud of what we generated for Space Academy and Jason of Star Command.
When I sit at this point in my life and think that these shows we did when I was in my 20s are going to be coming out on DVD, beyond the fact that I'd like to get a set myself and set them aside just for my kids, and for myself. I remember what I used to look like or what I used to be like. I just find it amazing. You know, there's a part of me that gets thrilled about that, but at the same time, I'm just hoping that people enjoy it, that they realize that this was a group having fun, doing entertainment.
These shows that were so popular back then, and really they were trailblazers for their time, because there were not, at that time, to my knowledge, any outer space shows, live action outer space shows that used miniature photography and captured all the special effects as they did for children. These were great shows for teaching children, and the fan base was very large then. The kids obviously were really into these shows, evidenced by the fact that they went straight from Space Academy to Jason of Star Command and 2 years of Jason of Star Command. And now the fact that there's a fan base now and eager to see these shows, and that they're being released on DVD, I couldn't be happier. It's fantastic, and it's very justified too, because these shows hold up. They hold up over all these years. They were very well done with very good casts, and I say here's to 20, 30, 40 more years of these shows running.
It's great that it's had a life and that people enjoyed it and that they're still enjoying it, and it's a thrill that it's going to be out on DVD for people, and I'm excited that other people are going to get the chance to enjoy it, and I'm glad for all those that have wondered, gosh, what happened to that show and how can I get a copy of it, that now finally there will be a good, pristine copy of it. And for my friends that have liked teasing me over the last 30 years about the show, they have another 30 years to have at me now, because it'll be, you know, saved there electronically. And it's been great that people really have a nice response.
This is a terrific thing that it's going to be a DVD, because there's a whole new generation of people who've never had the opportunity to see Space Academy. And one thing about Space Academy, it was always rooted in goodness. And these storylines will, the basic premise of the storylines and the heart from these storylines will continue on. They're evergreen. So it doesn't matter what generation sees it, they'll get something out of it, they'll enjoy it. And I'm thrilled myself. I haven't seen Space Academy for a long time, so I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be hard to say goodbye. Dear old friend, you're a good listener.
I was back on a business trip in Pittsburgh one time. I was meeting a gentleman from Germany, and we were getting into an elevator to go to a restaurant on the top of a building. 3 other businessmen walked into the elevator, and we were standing. And as the elevator doors got ready to close, all of a sudden there were 4 or 5 stewardesses coming our way. And this is back in the age when stewardesses were dressed in the costumes and easy to spot, and they were, you know, coming toward us, and one of them yelled, "That's Chris Gentry." And I froze. And one of them yelled, "No, that's not Chris Gentry." And the other one yelled, "Yeah, it is, it's Chris Gentry." And they started running toward us. And they started yelling, "That's Chris Gentry." And there were 5 people in this elevator, all standing around looking at each other, trying to figure out who Chris Gentry was. And my friend knew that my name wasn't Chris Gentry, so he didn't even think it was me. But these 3, 4 very attractive, and the rest of the stewardesses coming at us. The elevator doors closed, and it's a memory.